thinker on social change and mobility, M.N. Srinivas. Okay. And okay, this covers comprehensively. So we'll discuss this, and we'll also do previous questions. Okay. Can somebody tell me the main points of M.N. Srinivas' contribution? Give the basic concepts.
Sir, may I?
Sunil, you want to do it?
Yes, sir.
Please.
So he proposed that even though there's no mobility in the caste system, but a group, a whole of caste can move itself towards a higher caste.
That is the point. Okay. So there is no mobility for an individual,
Right.
but mobility for group.
Right.
No mobility for an individual. Okay. But tell me, before reading Srinivas, I mean, it not necessarily this particular uh, lesson, but even before, is it likely that we think like that people can improve their caste rank, or is it something very unusual?
Actually, we have, my father tells me that there are some castes which were not so good, but now they have improved. So, not that way, but
Yes,
so in casual manner, he sometimes tell me. So, that
very good,
way,
very good. Can you tell me from which position to other position? Was it, I mean, if you know the details, could they change the Varna itself?
no, not specific to Varna, but access to food and basic things. So earlier they were not having access to basic food and everything, but now they have something like that.
But that is not caste rank improvement. That is in general economic well-being.
Okay.
But let me tell you, on the whole, people's consumption increased. You know, the luxuries we have now are the luxuries Akbar Emperor did not have.
Mm.
Like fan, did he have fan? AC. I'm not talking about computer. Simple arrangements.
Right.
Variety of food. Veg burger. Okay, at least okay, food may be there at the time. And the number of clothes that we change over our lifetime, maybe the number of clothes that maybe very few people must be having at one time. They must be wearing one or two pieces of cloth for every occasion and displaying it to everybody. They say this is made, this came from some particular place. Okay. Whereas we just don't care. We just order and we use for some time and discard. I don't know about you, but I can tell you within my own lifespan, I saw the consumption boom. In childhood, we used to eat very little, buy very little. So we would get something like 5 paise, 10 paise and go to shop and buy something. And that is a kind of an achievement. We ask for it so many times and then they give. You just talk to your parents. This consumption is never heard of. Material wealth, never heard of. And with this much of material wealth, if we are if we are not confident that we are happy, there is something wrong with the way we are living. And if we are still pursuing material wealth, this is on a historical scale. One can watch within the experience of one's own lifetime. You just talk to your parents and grandparents. They will tell you how it was at one time. So general well-being, economic improvement is not Sanskritization. It is about relative caste position, C1, C2, C3, C4, and C4 going somewhere here. This is moving up. So change in the caste hierarchy, and which may sometimes mean change in Varna. Change Varna. So one huge improvement is material well-being. Next week schedule is going to be different. Next week for 2 classes we'll do religion, because the next issue in caste is about religion versus caste interface. And for 2 classes we are going to do economy, climate change and energy for social students. Okay. So we are going to ask whether we really moved in the right direction. It's phenomenal growth in material well-being, phenomenal growth. So everybody materially improved. Everybody materially improved. But M.N. Srinivas is talking about relative position. Relative position, one can know it maybe if one observes, which is rare, but historically. Because this takes place over generations. It can be 2 or 3 generations. So over generations. So relative ranking of the caste. Relative ranking of the caste is mobility. But that mobility may be so high that Varna itself may be changed. So Varna shift can take place or mobility can take place within Varna. Okay. But tell me, if you thought about this accurately, if you studied this accurately, what is Sanskritization? Does Sanskritization refer to mobility or something else?
So it is copying
Definition of Sanskritization, which M.N. was talked about.
So it is the imitation of ritual
Exactly.
lifestyle.
That is the point.
Higher caste.
Sanskritization doesn't refer to mobility. Sanskritization refers to emulation. Many misunderstand that point. Sanskritization refers to emulation. Emulation of lifestyle. But tell me, lifestyle of whom, according to M.N. Srinivas? Is it Brahmin style emulation?
Yeah, Brahmins.
No. Huh? Is it Brahmins?
It is dominant caste.
Exactly. Dominant caste. So one technical word is used when one particular caste is being emulated. That particular caste which is being emulated can be called what is called reference group. Reference group. So dominant caste is the reference group. Dominant caste is the reference group. For people to emulate. But if somebody simply emulates, will his caste rank improve? What would be the conditions for caste rank to improve? For C4 to move to this side, to this position?
Acceptance.
Acceptance. But when would C1 and C2 accept? C1 should accept it, we are close, and C2 should accept you are above. When will C1 and C2 accept? I mean, for C4 to come to this position, C3 should accept, C2 should accept. And C1 also should accept that, okay, now you are close.
Okay, when they have access to economic and power and...
Exactly. Economic and political power. Economic and political power. So, what is the summary? Power, economic and political, plus Sanskritization leads to mobility. And you know, this is like a diagram. This can be like an equation. You write like this after explaining. Examiner's attention will be drawn to this particular equation: power, economy, political, plus Sanskritization leads to mobility. So economic and political power plus Sanskritization leads to mobility. Which means Sanskritization is emulation. Sanskritization is not mobility. Lifestyle change. And what is the reference group for lifestyle change? Dominant caste. Dominant caste. So mobility, power, Sanskritization, dominant caste are all linked. And then mobility can be thought in terms of increased status. Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. This is about status. If you are thinking in terms of status and power, like Dumont, all interlink the theories, write about, give your answers in a way that various thinkers are interlinked. So this is about status, about power. So tell me, are power and status linked? Very much. If the power is high, with Sanskritization, one can improve the status. But without power, if you only Sanskritize, then you can be hurt. Others won't accept. Backed by power, lifestyle changes will lead to status changes. Status change can be within a Varna, or it can even be across Varnas. This is within caste system. But one can move even cross one's own Varna. Shudra becoming Kshatriya. Okay. So Sanskritization is about emulation. Emulation will take place, can be successful in bringing the mobility when it is backed by power. Then Varna change can occur, or even if within the Varna, caste rank can improve. But how does one know whether a caste rank improved or not? What is the most important manifestation? For example, if caste rank improves, will others give their daughters to improved caste? Yes or no?
No.
No, because caste is endogamous.
So
Caste
even
is
after
endogamous.
improving, they won't give.
Hmm?
Even after improving, they won't give.
Even after improving, they won't give. And others won't take in the first place. And they may not give. It may help, but intercaste marriage is a problem.
So even
Intercaste
after
marriage is an exception.
so even after Sanskritization and raising their status and power, they won't be able to
No.
get.
If the caste status improves, do you mean to say if caste status improves, the
Yeah.
caste of equal status will give the daughter? Does it operate like that? Kammas, Reddys and are equal now, but will Kamma people give their daughters to Reddys and Reddys are giving to Kammas?
Okay. Fine.
So caste is endogamous. Caste is defined as endogamous unit. So even if castes are equal, they remain endogamous. Okay. So caste need not always be hierarchical. Caste can be like this also. Caste can be like this. C1, C2, C3, like this also. But even then, endogamy. So castes at an equal level are also endogamous. That is how castes are rigid. Whereas in a class, there is nothing like that. If people belong to same class, then they exchange daughters. So even if castes are hierarchically at one level, they remain endogamous. So Dalits don't intermarry. Upper caste don't intermarry. So they follow the caste endogamy rule. So that is why I am asking, how do we know that caste status improved?
When there is contestation between comparable castes.
Comparable castes. So when will it be settled? Maybe by others. And more importantly, touchability rules, purity rules. Purity rules are there across the castes. Higher castes don't take certain things from the lower castes, but lower castes can take. It is like that. Brahmin is the least accessible. Okay. So purity norms are there in across the caste interactions. Within a caste, there are no norms. Within a caste, equal. But across the caste, purity norms are there. For example, you are a Kamma dominant caste in your area. You have a friend who is Vaishya. Can you enter his bedroom in the village? Yes, sir. Do you have any idea? You find it difficult to answer, or you have an answer?
Sir, I am Reddy. I entered my friend Vaishya's bedroom.
You enter? You enter what?
I entered my friend who is Vaishya, her bedroom I have entered.
Where?
I
Where
am
is
from
that?
village.
Very progressive village. Things may have changed, are changing, but normally it may not be allowed. Even if the castes are equal. To which Varna anyway Vaishyas belong in Andhra Pradesh?
Vaishya is a
Vaishya
Varna.
Varna only. Vaishya is a Varna and Vaishya can be caste. Reddis belong to which Varna?
Shudras.
Sudras. That is another problem. Many powerful castes come under Shudras. Shudra is defined as somebody who doesn't have sacred thread. Okay. Vaishyas maintain some ritual pollution, particularly the kitchen, the way they do the cooking, and they are vegetarian. Okay. But they may not be more affluent than Reddis. They may not have power, but they maintain ritual distance. Because if some people don't maintain ritual distance, they think others will think they are undermining the status. Undermining the status. It can be pollution or it can be undermining the status. Okay. So, so ritual pollution exists even when one belongs to higher class. For example, collector is a Dalit collector. He goes to a Reddy Sarpanch in a village. Can a Dalit collector sit on the cot of the Sarpanch? Gayatri, what do you say? Will you allow Dalit collector to sit on the cot in your house?
I will be allowing, sir, but I will be allowing, but I have seen a similar trend. There were elections.
In your village, your people.
Yes, sir. My people, my family would be allowing, but
Allowing what? What is my question?
Dalit collector sitting on cot of.
Cot as opposed to?
As
So he
opposed
comes
to
to your
sitting
house.
down.
He comes to your house. What will you do?
I will ask him to sit on cot or sofa, whatever it is, like everybody. But I have seen, said that discrimination is there. When there were Sarpanch elections, when candidates were coming to ask votes, they are usually accompanied by higher caste, and they will be sitting on chairs, and the candidate who actually is contesting will be standing beside him. I have seen that.
Okay, you are thinking in terms of standing and sitting, but I am thinking in terms of cot versus chair.
Okay.
Chair
I
may be
don't.
secular. No, you can't ask collector to stand. That is impossible.
Yes,
But
they would
instead,
be giving chair which is isolated, which
ah,
can be.
so even if one is power, that pollution norms may still. But if not Reddy, I don't think he will be allowed in a Brahmin house. If a Dalit collector is allowed in a Brahmin house, Brahmin will lose the job next day. People may not go to him for the ceremonial purpose, because one may think that he got polluted. These are all real things. In town, these things don't matter, but in village, these things matter a lot. So higher castes maintain more discrimination. But even across equivalent castes, there are always some restrictions. So apart from endogamy, there are many barriers across castes. Some are simple barriers, some are hierarchy related barriers. Don't touch. So more intimate, least access. Courtyard is different from home, and within home, kitchen, bedroom, and puja room. These are more inaccessible. So, which caste is higher can be reflected in touchability rules. Who is giving access to whom and to what? So you will see these rules operating even when a lower caste person is materially affluent. Materially affluent. So caste means endogamy, touchability rules, restrictions. To the issue of untouchability, untouchability is nothing but maximum restriction. Touchability rules are there across castes, and maximum distance means untouchable. Staying outside the village. So untouchability is simply the maximization of the distance. And in this 4 Varna model, they don't even belong to any Varna. They are outside the Varna model. We don't exactly know how untouchables came about, and nobody knows. There are many theories and nobody knows. Okay. According to some, all of them were Shudras at one time and some were checked out. That was one. Okay. So, distance and maximum distance is imposed on the untouchables. And then different forms of untouchability emerged. But otherwise, touchability rules are there across castes. So endogamy is only one kind of restriction. There are many other restrictions. Okay. So pollution norms, touchability rules are linked to status, but that status can be improved when political and economic power plus sensitization. That is what M.N. Srinivas is saying. And he is saying historically it has been going on like that. Historically. Okay. So touchability rules are the markers of caste hierarchy. Markers, status indicators. Within the hierarchy, we are using the word status, and power is of two types, political power and economic power. So power plus Sanskritization. Sanskritization is emulation of the dominant caste lifestyle, leads to hierarchy jump, which can be called vertical mobility. So this is the process. Is it clear?
Sir, how do we know that a caste has moved up? Can you
How?
tell me? How do we know that a given caste has moved up? The question that you...
Exactly. By the way, people follow the touchability rules. When others accept, people around accept when one caste made it up economically and politically, and also lifestyle changed. So finally, successful mobility is about acceptance. People around should accept. There is one word for it, neighboring caste. Neighboring caste. Kammareddy or neighboring caste. Mala Madiga, neighboring caste. Neighbors. Closer in the hierarchy. So neighboring caste should approve. Yes, you are closer to me. So by the approval of the neighboring caste. Okay. So you get to know.
Why will they approve?
Why will they approve? Because these people have become economically and politically powerful. Then it is better to be friends.
No, but why to be equal? They can keep them below also, no?
Why do they?
Why do they want to keep them equal? They can keep them below also.
Exactly. They try to keep them below only, but when they cannot succeed,
Okay.
when they can't succeed, more affluent, that is the reason. Everybody wants to go up. That is why material factors play a very important role. But then it suddenly doesn't change. It takes place over a period of time. It takes some generations. Just because people become rich, then their caste will not improve. But everybody
Also,
wants to be high. Everybody wants to be high.
there also you have told that they approve because if they don't approve, it is a very threat to the caste system.
That's
They will be questioning and they will be disregarding the caste system. It questions their own position, so it is better to approve.
yes. Occupations may change, the political positions will change, relationships will change. Tell me, what is, how does this contribute, how does it explain caste-based solidarity? Explain why caste consciousness is important and caste solidarity. Caste solidarity. Caste solidarity means sense of oneness. Tell me, how does one explain caste consciousness and caste solidarity? Making use of this concept of Sanskritization. Can you explain why caste people feel that they are one?
Because they interact with the society as a group, not as individual. So
Okay. How?
Probably it's the other way around.
Like?
The society interacts with them as a group, not as an individual, and based on their identity, they treat them in general.
Okay. Okay, I gave one example. Let us take this question. You get a good service. You belong to a particular caste, and your caste group comes and asks you, will felicitate. Suppose you belong to a Velaga caste. Okay, so Velaga people come. I think this is one very common thing students face after the selection. Their caste group will come first. So how do you think a student should respond, and how are you going to respond? How will you think? What will you think is the right response? Of course, now you are more interested in getting it and not in that. You want to be in a position that others call you. But assume you are in that position, or you will be in that position. So what will you do? What are the pros and cons?
before
Will you be
reading
associated? Will you be associated with your caste association?
I really don't know, but before reading this material, I was like, I should not be encouraging this caste identities and all. But now, after knowing this caste solidarity concept,
So
I
basically, I'm spoiling people.
after knowing
You
this,
were neutral before, and I made you casteist.
I mean, I just came to agree to the fact that it is okay. The group of people will be acting as a pressure group, and but again same thing from your material only, who does it? If it is done by lower caste, it is for the betterment of society. If it is done by higher caste, then you're creating
Do
more.
you know, in a way, this material is against Supreme Court ideas. that these identities are bad. I said it is not like that. Identity, it depends upon how you use the identities. Supreme Court judgment said national identity, Indian great, and everything else is, what is it? Indian identity may be far more dangerous than caste identity. So it all depends upon how you use the identity. And Dalit identity is extremely important. That is a way to mobilize. That's one upper caste Hindu mindset of Supreme Court. See, look at what kind of things Supreme Court gives. You can use Supreme Court judgments to show how conservative Indian society is, not how progressive. It is upper caste. It is upper caste people who think we should forget caste. So how can Dalits not mobilize on the basis of caste? How can Muslims not mobilize on the basis of caste? Isn't it? How can somebody contesting an election say that Muslims are being discriminated and we should vote? Then it becomes communal speech. How can it be like that? What is wrong? Malas are being discriminated, or Madigas being discriminated, and so vote for a party which says that we will give this subcategorization to Madigas. So that does it mean a violation of election code? Then what is that code for? So an identity is for mobilization, but the point is what you are doing with that mobilization. Are you creating a better society? Are you creating a more oppressive society? So when Supreme Court said that all these identities are wrong and they cannot be used for electoral purpose, it is completely missing the point. Identity is the basis of democracy. It is just nothing but we are not individuals, we are groups. We are groups, we are castes, we belong to religions, we belong to languages. A better society is about what kind of relations exist across these groups. Exploitative relations or fair relations. Absence of group is not needed, nor is it possible. So caste is an identity. Caste is an identity. Gender is an identity. Religion is an identity. Language is an identity. Region is an identity. Only class is not an identity. All these divisions are identities. And mobilization takes place across these identities. There is nothing wrong. What is important is what kind of relations exist across these groups. The problem is not that some people think they are Reddis and some people think they are Dalits, but it is about relationship between Reddis and Dalits. Okay, so now tell me, okay, now finally Gayatri, you tell me your conclusion then. You are from Reddy, so will you go to the caste association and then say, yes, we have to fight against this Kamma people?
No, sir, I would not be going. But my father insists that I should be going.
Your father will insist that you should be going. Okay, so you won't be going.
I won't be going.
Why? You can give me your reasons.
Sir, from my Facebook username, I have removed Reddy 3 years ago only.
Okay.
I feel that I am like that only.
Okay. Okay. That is good. But they won't go by such things. They will find out you are ready and then come to you.
No, sir, not that I'm telling. I stand by it.
Okay,
They,
I understand. But then all commas are ganging up to change the chief minister in Andhra Pradesh. So what do you do?
I'm from Telangana.
You are from Telangana. Okay. Suppose Reddys want to come to power in Telangana.
So Reddys are Brahmins or Kshatriyas?
Reddys come under Sudras
In the sense,
because they are not twice born, they do agriculture, peasants. So technically they come under Sudra category.
okay.
But that is a problem with this Varna model. Very powerful castes also are coming under Shudra category.
Because generally Brahmins or Kshatriyas enjoy the top position. So,
Exactly, that is true.
so how come
That's
the
true.
Reddys?
In Andhra Pradesh, we don't have Kshatriyas here.
That's what, because in Maharashtra we have Marathas, so they have most of the clout.
Exactly.
So Reddys are not Kshatriyas, not Brahmins, still they are
Exactly.
dominating. That's what.
Exactly. That is exactly, you are
Uh,
right. That is why M.N. Srinivas says this Varna kind of thinking is distorting the reality. For example, Marathas belong to higher caste. I don't exactly know the Maharashtra position.
no, they are Kshatriyas, sir. They are Kshatriyas.
Marathas belong to higher caste and they are Kshatriyas. Then it is in tune with the Varna model. But here, Reddys and Kammas belong to higher caste, but they come under Shudras and they don't come under Kshatriyas. There is a vacuum for Kshatriya Varna in this state.
Okay.
Very few Kshatriyas.
Okay.
It is Sudra people are dominating.
I think Rajus are Kshatriyas.
What is that? Razus.
Rajus.
No, Razus are OBCs actually here. Razus, it is a effort at Sanskritization. They added name Razu to them, but they didn't really move up.
Okay.
But as a part of Sanskritization, they may have added this Razu. But otherwise, they belong to BC category, Sudras. Okay. And many OBCs that we call come under Sudra category. That is why Sudra category is highly diverse. Dominant castes as well as very poor castes all are there in the Sudra category. Okay. So it is not true that the dominant castes are coming from Kshatriya Varna. Dominant castes can come from Sudra Varna also. That is a Varna model is only a model. The actuality is caste. Caste is like this and real. Varna is a categorization and it is not fitting. So dominant, Shudra is one problem. That is dominant caste coming under Shudra. And at some places, Varna itself missing, like very little of Kshatriya in this state. And untouchables, of course, not being mentioned at all in the Varna model. So these are the problems with Varna. But then why, the purpose of Varna model is that because the caste names are unique to the language region, at an all India level, one can try to make out to which Varna they belong. But when they don't match, it creates confusion. For somebody from Maharashtra, trying to understand how people from Sudra Varna become dominant. So it is mismatch.
And one more thing that I noticed means I was so many years in Hyderabad, that
Mm.
dowry is like a very exorbitant in Andhra Pradesh. Means what is the reason? I don't know. Means generally you said that uh, it is just like if the economic benefits of the women are not there, then to contribute that it is there.
That
But
is
in what I have seen that but in Andhra the people, if they are more educated, they will take more of dowry.
No, I think it has reduced so much. It
Okay,
has
because
reduced.
now in UPSC we see people that he became an class one
That's
officer,
true.
so he
In
will get 10
UPSC
crore, 5
marriages,
crore.
in UPSC marriage, boy is making and girl is not anywhere. So then she is bringing her wealth to match this man's
Well,
achievement. That is a case of
okay.
dowry. But when both of them are in service or both, I don't think dowry is an important issue.
Okay.
So dowry as a
Crores,
problem
that is the
hugely
problem.
reduced now, hugely reduced.
Okay.
So when woman wants to catch up man's achievement, then she tries it with the wealth. That is how dowry is. So
Okay.
what the theory we did is still right. But as economic contribution of woman is changing, dowry is getting diluted. Dowry is not a problem now, as of now. Many women are getting married without dowry at all. In fact, men are complaining that they don't have a sufficient number of women to marry. It's gender equation changed so much.
Yeah.
Okay, because economic empowerment of women, education.
Because in
So dowry is
Marwari,
a problem when woman is not contributing,
Mhm.
but that changed.
Because
Okay.
nowadays
So where are
in
we? Caste solidarity. So how is caste solidarity linked to this? So you are saying that you will not go, but what is your reason for not going? Because you just don't want this caste consciousness.
Yes, sir. Also,
At least the higher caste should drop this consciousness.
higher caste should drop this concept.
Exactly.
But again, there is also this counter narrative that there are poor and uh, not so prosperous families within Reddy's also. They need, there is this narrative also.
I mean, within an upper caste, there are poor people.
There are poor people.
Yes, that's
And
true. That is another thing about caste. If rich Reddy is trying to help poor Reddy, how can anybody find fault with?
so,
Isn't
if
it?
mm,
Reddy hostel, what is wrong with that? It may be helping only Reddys, but what is wrong? Caste is a group. Okay. So one can accept that one doesn't belong, but there is nothing wrong if one says that yes, I do belong and I will try to help. There is no problem. So there are classes within the caste, and caste solidarity means that the higher classes of a caste trying to help the lower classes of a caste. That is good. Reddy hostel is a good example. Vaishya hostel is a good example. If Dalits don't have hostels because they cannot afford, and upper caste don't have hostels because they don't want to go on the caste basis, then what kind of it is it? If rich people are helping poor people, whatever be the means, that is good. Whatever be the criteria, that is good. That is why I don't think we need to do this identity bashing. People belong to different groups. There is no problem. What we need to be concerned is about relationship between groups. And of course, rich versus poor within a group. That is classes within a caste. If rich Reddys are helping poor Reddys, there is absolutely nothing wrong. You can't object rich. Why should rich Reddys discriminate and why can't they help poor Kammas? Not necessary. Let them help poor Reddys and let rich Kammas help poor Kammas. What is wrong? As long as they're helping somebody, it is good. So denying all identities and glorifying only Indian identity, I don't think that is right. Indian identity is one identity. Caste identity is another identity. Religion is another identity. There is nothing wrong with identities as such. Identities are nothing but a kind of grouping. Society is not made of only individuals. Society is made of individuals as well as groups. And there can be diverse kinds of groups. Clan is a group, Gotra is a group, language is a group, region is a group, caste is a group, religion, these are all various groups, tribe is a group. So political system can address people not as individuals, but also as members of groups. So it need not be only state and the individual. It can be state and the group and the individual. Okay, so if you ask me, as she said, the main point which I have not conveyed here, but comes out is that the article did not oppose identity. It looked at the purpose it is serving. And then said, what purpose the identity should serve. Okay, and then I went even to say that if some people are trying to create a caste-free India, they're more likely to be from upper caste only. So do you agree with my observation, Gayatri? Yes.
Yeah.
It is always the case. Whoever is trying for unity, remember, he is dominating others. Unity is another name for domination. So let us think of caste-free is a call for unity. It must come from dominant caste only, from upper caste. All pro-unity things, they are interested in that particular unit when they are dominating the system. Who wants to unite Hindus? Upper caste. What did Ambedkar want? Thank you, please. I am not interested in Hinduism. So it is like that. All unity calls are more likely to be calls for domination. Okay. United India and caste-free India are most likely upper caste. So what do sufferers want? Sufferers think that identity to be focused, that identity to be talked about. In fact, in a GNP calculations, instead of farmers and industrialists and things like that, let us find out what is GNP of Malas or Dalits. It will be very, very little. But then all the upper caste people will be horrified that you are creating a casteist India. Try to get bank loans caste-wise. How much money taken by whom? Not by the number of people, but by the amount. And get the industry data caste-wise. Who are these people? You should ask people like Kancha Ilaiah. He will tell you the caste-wise data. But then such an analysis will be considered casteist. But by whom? By the upper caste. So all unity calls will be the calls by the people who dominate the system. Okay. So what we need to see is what kind of society we are creating, which means that how identities are being put to use rather than taking a stand. All identities are bad. Okay. So how it generates caste solidarity? Caste solidarity is generated because if the entire caste becomes wealthy, then the caste will move up. Caste is a question of connections and connections. Okay, so caste moves up. Caste solidarity. So caste thinking, caste moves up. On the other hand, if only few people are rich within the caste and remaining people are poor, then the caste ranking comes down. And when the rich people, time comes for the rich people to give their daughters to others, when others are poor, their wealth gets diluted. They become poor. So caste thinking is about a group thinking, taking care of one's own caste. Okay, like individuals fight, caste also fight. Okay, so that's about caste solidarity and caste consciousness. Okay, next point. Tell me, who will raise the next point? So we discussed Sanskritization.
Sir, can you explain twice born?
Okay, twice born. Thank you. Twice born, also called Dvija. These three varnas are called twice born. These castes under three varnas undergo what is called Upanayanam ceremony. Upanayanam, born like anybody, and then he goes through a particular ceremony in which he starts wearing this sacred thread, which here in Telugu called Janyam, sacred thread. So that is supposed to start second birth. That is a second birth. That's why these people are called twice born. Twice born. So they undertake Upanayanam ceremony. So that is a symbol of higher Varna. So all these are twice born castes, means these three, twice born.
Sir, has it got anything to do with enlightenment and knowledge?
No, 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 nothing to do with enlightenment. That is a completely spiritual concept. No, nothing to do. It refers to only Upanayanam ceremony. Nothing to do with. Okay.
Something similar to what they have in Christianity, baptism.
Maybe like that. Yes, maybe we don't know where. Maybe from Hindus they took. I don't know who got this first. Could be like that. Could be like that. We don't know the origins. Okay. Now tell me. So you have any? Is this case of Nonias clear to you? Tell me, what does the myth say about Nonias? I mean, why did they go for such a myth, and what does it say? I mean, what do you understand the role of myth from the case study of Nonias? What is the myth about?
Myths.
Okay, or put differently, do Hindus have an equivalent myth? Can you talk about myth of Hindus?
Yeah, about Brahmin coming from mouth.
Exactly.
That.
How various varnas are coming. How various varnas are coming? From that first man, from mouth, Brahmin. And then from shoulders, Kshatriya. And then Vaisya, from thighs. And then feet, Shudra. So this is origin myth of varnas. So what purpose does this myth serve? Myth explains the society. This is about role of myth. Role of myth. This is called the myth. Okay. So why I like this Nonia case study is that you will not only see the Sanskritization process, but caste mobility and also myth creation. And also, can you tell me the role Westernization, British rule played in Sanskritization process? What is the help that the British rule gave to Sanskritization? British rule gave to Sanskritization in the case of Nonias. Please switch on the audio.
Third generation of Nunias have discarded
You mean, what is that?
third generation after Westernization influence, third generation of.
How did these people come to higher Varna? How did British rule help?
British has given them alternative
Economic opportunities. Economic
alternative
opportunities. So economic opportunities brought economic power. Economic power. And after economic power, they started Sanskritizing. And then Kshatriya. And what did they use? They used media, books, associations, all these things. That is how Westernization and Sanskritization can be linked. Westernization gave opportunities and they used it for Sanskritization and caste mobility. Okay, see, all along, people were trying to hike up their rank in the caste hierarchy. This stopped only in post-independent India after reservations. After reservations, people are not trying to hike up their caste status. In fact, they are using all their political and economic power to claim that they are OBCs or even Dalits. So the effort to hike up political and economic power continues, but no more claims of higher Varna. That is the most important impact that the reservation had. No more claim for higher Varna. So people use all these opportunities and then try to hike up, try to get economic power and political power, but they don't say, now we are higher Varna. No. So in the case of Nuniyas, they used opportunities created by the British and then this. Okay. In fact, a lot of Sanskritization would have taken place if these same opportunities minus reservations. Okay, there would have been a lot of competition. But now what happened was reservations, that is one thing, and the caste system itself is being undermined by westernization. People are not trying to be, I mean, that we are higher caste. Earlier, people tried to belong to higher caste, but now the caste system itself is being undermined. In the sense, ideologically, there is a justification for equality, okay, liberty and things like that. So that is about. Okay, now tell me, how about woman and Sanskritization? Sanskritization and westernization and woman. Is Sanskritization favorable to women? Why? Is it favorable or not?
Not favorable.
It is not favorable. Because under Sanskritization, woman's position comes down. That is why you need to look at woman in terms of caste also, caste and Sanskritization. Higher caste, Sanskritized, woman's position is down. In a lower caste, woman is going out, her position may be high. But when it comes to westernization, again, woman's position up. Feminism, equality and things like this. So feminism, equality, liberty, all these are result of westernization. Sanskritic traditions, woman being confined to home, not being educated, all this Sanskritization. So impact on woman is different between Sanskritization and westernization. All the changes that happened, according to Emerson, was 150 plus years of British rule. He called it westernization. Okay. So that is about Sanskritization and westernization. Okay. So we discussed name, Varna and caste. Dominant caste. Okay. Now tell me, let us look at the contemporary position. What is dominant caste? Okay, can anybody, Haram, can you talk about dominant caste in Maharashtra? You have any idea? Which caste is dominant and why is it dominant, and are there dominant castes in Maharashtra, if you know about Maharashtra?
Yes.
Haram?
Yes, sir.
Which castes
Also,
are dominant in Maharashtra?
so politically, it is Marathas only.
You mean the caste is called Maratha? We have no idea. That's why we're
Yes, Marathas. It is like it is like a group of castes. It's like Marathas. So there are like Patels, Deshmukhs in that.
okay. Marathas means people from that region, Maratha. Is it not like?
No, not sir. Majority of the people stay in like one region, Marathwada, but it is like many people are there. So Marathas, they are come as a group nowadays. That reservation is also going on. In Marathas, there are multiple castes. There are like Patils are there, Deshmukhs are there, then various castes are there.
Patils and Deshmukhs.
Yeah, Kunbis
Whole
are
caste.
there.
Okay.
Whole caste.
Who is more powerful between Patils and Deshmukhs?
So now Deshmukhs are more in number. It's also a number game, sir. So who is more? So it is
exactly. So why not identify that numbers play a role? Okay, number game. Tell me, if there are more in number, how does it help?
politically it helps.
Politically, numbers. Okay, next. So numbers matter a lot. Next.
So even government jobs, who are more into government jobs.
Exactly, government jobs. Okay, will help. Next.
Then economic power also matters. But,
Economic
not
power in terms of
who
industry,
are industry.
contracts,
Mhm.
companies. Yes. Okay, next.
Mm. So unity
Access
also
to
matters.
state, access to government, isn't it? Political parties. Which party is ruling? So, can you tell me which caste is ruling? For example, is any caste playing a more important role in BJP or Shiv Sena?
Yeah, in BJP mostly it's Brahmins only, sir. Because the
Brahmin.
earlier it
But
is generally
Shiv
decided
Sena
on the
also they
basis
are
of chief.
Brahmins, I think. Shiv Sena.
Yeah, they are also Brahmins.
But how could Brahmins be so powerful? In Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, Brahmins are not powerful.
So first time it happened, sir.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Because earlier all were from NCP and Congress, they are all Marathas. First time it happened that BJP and Shiv Sena came, and BJP came, and it was like Brahmin chief minister after like 50 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Now,
That's
yeah.
so state power is one important issue. State power. Okay. So numbers, access to state political parties, contracts, companies, government jobs. So in these ways, a caste becomes dominant. That is what M.N. Srinivas is saying. But in one particular study of Kammas, I gave that study. She said she brought different factors. For example, going to US. She talked about Kammas coming to Telangana, getting government contracts, power, and all those things. But it just that is about Kammas only. But different there will be different reasons for different castes to be dominant. But on the whole, dominance is is a result of numbers, government jobs, economic power, political power. Okay. In the case of Kammas, she says remittance income. People going to US and they're sending so much money. Is that point there in Maharashtra also, around? Or some caste sending
No,
their
no,
children
sir.
to US and
No.
okay,
That outward culture is not as much as in Andhra Pradesh.
like in Andhra. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it's very high in
In
Andhra
Andhra
Pradesh.
Pradesh, many people are going and earning remittance income and sending to the villages. That is a
Yeah.
source of power. Yes.
Mm.
Okay.
That's a very good source of power, sir.
Very good source of power.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay.
In Vijayawada here, from my class, almost if you say around, if we are around 45 people, around 40 members are in the US or
My God.
Canada.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they have done in their
From my family, I mean, I came from a village, and in my village, from my family, almost all my cousins are there all over the world, Europe, US. So many went. So even in remote villages also in Andhra Pradesh, people are going. Okay. So Vishal, so many of your classmates left, and
yes, sir.
you are here to settle this issue of IAS exam.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, is it not contributing to power in the state?
I think so, sir.
Very much. Actually, in many villages, agriculture is doing so pathetically. Farmers have income only when their children are abroad or in jobs. Agriculture is just stopped doing anything. Now my cousins are telling their parents that you stop cultivating, because what is the point in giving money to clear the loans which you are making due to agriculture? Because you're only creating loans. So you stop it, and whatever the money we are giving you, you just consume it. You don't do any agriculture because agriculture is loss making. So because of pathetic state of agriculture, non-agricultural sources have become more important. If one is depending only on agriculture, one doesn't have power because one doesn't have money. So because of poor performance of agriculture, other factors have become important. And access to state power is important because this is related to economic opportunities. Okay, you get contracts, you get company awards, so many things. So political power and economic power. So power is not confined to a village now. It is about the state, about the world, who manages companies, who get who migrations, dollar income, petrodollars. So it is a spread. So the factors of dominance have changed a lot. That is the point that case study shows. Okay. So the concept of dominant caste is still relevant. It is only the factors that contribute to dominance are varying. Okay. So that's all.
Sir,
Huh.
but here, as I mentioned, most of my classmates have gone.
Okay.
But from what I know, I'm just trying to make some connection here. So not all of them are kammas. There are some non-kammas who have gone as well.
Okay.
Can we see this process also as a form of Sanskritization, where non-comers are also emulating going to foreign, though under the cover of, say, economic opportunities, but if we look at the big picture, does that?
Okay, that's true. But that process is called technically Westernization.
Okay.
He used Sanskritization meant lifestyle within Hindu tradition. It is not about going out, political parties. So what is happening now is Westernization. It's Westernization. Okay, so these things can be covered under Westernization rather than Sanskritization. Okay, now.
Sir, can there be a
Take this
situation?
question. Okay, please.
So can there be a situation where someone is not going to Sanskritization and Westernization, but is directly jumping to Westernization?
That is Westernization only. Many people are doing that. People are not going through Sanskritization now because all of them are doing the Westernization. Upper castes are Westernizing and lower castes are Westernizing.
Okay.
It is not that the lower castes are Sanskritizing first and then Westernizing. No, all of them are Westernization. Even critique of caste itself is Westernization. So Sanskritization, emulation of the dominant caste, was within the traditional position, within the Hindu tradition. That is gone. That is gone. What is going on now is Westernization. Claim for higher varna is gone, and a particular lifestyle emulation is gone. So Sanskritization in that sense is outdated now. Is outdated. What is going on now is sweeping Westernization. Okay. Take this question. He asked, write a critique of the structural and functional perspective used by M.N. Srinivas in the understanding of Indian society. I don't know what is a critique, but take the question. Write a critique of the structural and functional perspective used by M.N. Srinivas in understanding Indian society. Okay, answer that question. Write a critique of the structural and functional perspective. First of all, what does it mean? Structural and functional perspective used by M.N. Srinivas in understanding Indian society. So what is structural and functional perspective plus what is a critique?
structural perspective is how a caste as a group can improve its hierarchy.
Okay, caste as a group can improve its hierarchy. Okay. Tell me, Sanskritization is called not a structural change but a positional change. Why is it so? Because the caste is changing its position, not the structure. Okay. So, structural perspective. What is a structure basically? By structure, structure means parts and relationship. Structure refers to parts and connectedness. Is a structure. This is structure. What are the castes and how are they connected is the structure. Function means what is it that it is doing? Various processes or functions. M.N. Srinivas' perspective is called structural functionalism. Structural functionalism. Okay. Structural functionalism is one school. You can call it sociology or anthropology. Structural functionalism is a school which talks about how a particular process is a part of the structure. Sanskritization is strengthening the caste system. How is Sanskritization strengthening the caste system? Because when one group is powerful, it is giving higher status to them so that the structure is not undermined. If a Sudra becomes powerful, we can't keep him as Sudra. So something else is done to it. He may become a Kshatriya. It is like that. So this is called structural functional approach. It is about structural functional approach talks about how society is maintained smoothly through various processes. How society is functioning smoothly through various processes. So Sanskritization talks about how a caste can improve its rank when it got power through emulation, which means culture is preserved, dominance is preserved, caste system is preserved, and change is accommodated. Change is accommodated, power is accommodated. So something like C4 goes and moves up closer to C1. So that's how caste system is maintaining its unity all along. So thinking in terms of smoothness, maintenance, how various processes finally maintain a system is structural functionalism. But the question is, critique. What is a critique? In general, Marxist will look at this functionalism in the sense that you don't hit structural functionalists haven't seen the conflict in this. M.N. Srinivas is not looking at the conflict, exploitation, domination. That is a problem in general with functionalism. Functionalism doesn't see how things are bad. Okay. So how this dominance is maintained, how this oppression is maintained. The word functionalism means things are smooth and functional. So Marxists think that what is functional about caste system, it is dysfunctional. If somebody is suffering, it can't be functional. That's how Marxists look at functionalism. So I think that's what is expected here from you, critique of structural functionalism. Okay. So not looking at the conflict, not looking at the oppression, not looking at the system itself or how this oppression is maintained. But it doesn't mean M.N. Srinivas supports this oppression, but one is not giving any theoretical perspective to the fact of oppression or domination. So that's what one can say. Please. Is it clear?
So in this answer, first we should be writing what M.N. Srinivas has said.
Of course, you should write everything. You should write about what is Sanskritization and dominant caste, case study, and the structure, and Varna and caste, everything. It's a comprehensive question.
And then critique.
And then, critic at the end. And in the beginning also, you say what the critic is. Any structural functionalism undermines or ignores conflict. Okay, take one more question. Take this. Maybe this is the question you also asked. How far Srinivas Sanskritization Sanskritization is modernizing force or traditionalizing force? In understanding the changes in the caste system. How far Srinivas Sanskritization is modernizing force or traditionalizing force in understanding the changes in the caste system? Tell me, is it modernizing force or traditionalizing force?
Traditionalizing food.
Traditionalizing force. One striking example from Nonia's case, what kind of traditionalizing things that took place?
Creating a myth to.
What happens to woman's position? Patriarchy is strengthened or undermined when Sanskritization takes place?
Strengthened.
Patriarchy is strengthened. Woman's position. Vegetarian or non-vegetarian?
Vegetarianism.
Vegetarian. So people move towards Brahminical. Sanskritizing is that. So tradition is followed. More pilgrimages, dress pattern. Okay. We may find it difficult to imagine these things because all of them are gone now. All of them are gone. We are under the major influence of westernization now. Westernization. But earlier, Sanskritization means tradition, be it woman, be it dress, be it gods, pilgrimages, worship. So strengthening the tradition. Okay, but westernization is undermining the tradition, undermining the caste system itself. Liberty, equality, questioning, all that.
Sir?
Okay, just take this question. This is about politics. Explain the concepts of dominant caste and vote bank, giving examples from specific regions. See, it's a very dynamic question. Explain the concepts of dominant caste and vote bank. Okay, you can take similar question. What are the features of dominant caste? and how effective is it in understanding today's reality? Okay, maybe you can answer the last question first. What are the features of dominant caste and how effective is it in understanding today's reality? And last question, westernization and institutional changes in India. Okay, that's all. Enough for today. Okay. So first answer that fourth question. Features of dominant caste and how effective is it in understanding today's reality? Features of dominant caste we discussed. Numbers, government jobs, political access. Okay. How do you answer this question? How effective is it in understanding today's reality? Tell me.
Explaining through the case study of Kamma, how
Okay,
they captured political power with.
that's true. But in general, can somebody explain from other state? Sweta, you want to say something? Supraja, can you take up your state and explain if there is any, what is the dominant state? You are from?
Telangana only, sir.
Okay, Telangana only. So no news. Nothing. Sweta?
So, I can take the state of Haryana,
Okay, very good.
where Jat were the community, like from the SC.
No, just one second. From our discussion, what did you feel about? I mean, definitely you should always correlate it with Haryana because you can't make sense of who are these Kammas and Reddys. Like we can't understand Haryana. Okay, what did you feel? Tell me. This is the problem with the discussion on caste. Okay.
So actually, I never faced such discrimination. So while having a discussion with you guys, like I was getting new things.
You are from technically from which Varna or anything like that?
So I don't know.
You have no idea. Okay.
No, sir. So
if you are not being discriminated, maybe you are discriminating others.
No, sir. So I'm from Central India, Madhya Pradesh.
Okay.
And I'm not aware about such caste discrimination like which prevail here. But like listening about your discussions about Kammas or Reddys.
Oh my God.
There was something new I learned today.
So you are clueless about what is going on. Okay, then you should talk to your parents, please. So discuss with them why these people discuss all these kinds of things. Okay, how is our villages? How are you related? What are your grandparents? So maybe you are born and brought up in a city and you have no idea of the caste. Okay, you should discuss with your parents and you should ask them about their parents. That is about your grandparents. So find out in a village arrangement. Caste is, we know more about caste when we are familiar with villages, because it is in village you get to know the caste features in a very striking manner. Okay, okay. You just tell me what you feel about what we discussed. In your state, in Haryana, you have no clue.
So like I've just one thing to say in Jat community, which is from scheduled caste, but now they are like dominant class in Haryana.
Okay.
So their political power is also their political and economical both strong.
Jats are very, very powerful. Okay.
Yes.
But Jats come under which Varna? I think they come under Sudras, right? Isn't it so? I have no idea.
I'm not aware about their Varna, but I think they come in the SC.
Jats come under SC.
Yes, they take reservation.
Okay. They take reservations, that's true, but is it not OBC reservation?
So different states have different reservation, I think.
Uh, okay,
Sir, in Delhi, they are in OBC.
Yes, sir, she is right actually.
Jats
UP,
come under OBC. Maybe the
Jat, yeah,
tell
Jats in
me.
UP have different reservation and Jats in Haryana have different reservation.
Okay, okay, okay. Jats in UP, which reservation?
I don't know that, but there's a movie called
See,
Article 15.
OBC, it is Shudras who get OBC reservation.
Jats, as it mentioned in
Dalits get
history
SC
books.
reservation. They're not.
No, they were agriculturalists actually, as mentioned in some history books.
Okay.
But if we go by present scenario, there was a big protest by the Jats in Haryana a couple of years ago.
That's true.
So even in Article 15, there is a mention of this Jats that Haryana has different reservation and UP has different reservation for Jat.
Okay, okay. We need to look into that. Okay. Fine. This is this is area specific. Area specific. You need to.
Even in Telangana and Andhra, I think Naidus are OC in Andhra and here they are OBC.
Yes, Naidus are different. Naidus are coming under OBCs. Yes. Naidu, Balija, they come under OBCs. See, on the whole, OBC power has improved a lot in recent decades. OBC power has improved. How? Because of numbers. Because of numbers. And many states are captured by OBCs. Even Prime Minister belongs to OBC. Okay, many northern states are captured by OBCs. In Andhra Pradesh, it hasn't happened. Chiranjeevi wanted to set the trend of OBC capturing, but he didn't succeed. So mostly Kammas and Reddys and OBC haven't come here. But in North India, many states are captured by OBC. OBC have numbers. Okay. But then the dominant caste is not about OBC. I mean, you can work out. Otherwise, you just go by this study on Kamma. But you write from your own understanding specific caste and how it is doing in your state. Because you may read, but if you know more about it, then you will write better, you will give more facts. So you go by your specific state and the specific caste, not a Varna or category of OBC and SC, not like that. Take a particular caste and how it is doing it. Okay. But to the question, is it relevant? I think it is very much relevant because the caste is playing a very important role in politics. So what is your answer to this? Explain the concept of dominant caste and vote bank, giving examples from specific regions. This is a big question. Vote bank. How is vote bank related to dominant caste? Castes are mobilizing other castes as vote banks. So caste itself votes. Vote bank means the entire caste voting in a particular way. So caste-based voting, vote bank. So if Kamma caste person is contesting, then Kammas are more likely to vote. For example, YSR party is Reddy's, TDP, Kammas, like that. So that is what vote bank politics. And also affiliated to one caste, other castes give support and that caste vote. So all kinds of caste-based voting is vote bank politics. It is not individuals voting, but caste-wise voting. And you know, caste-wise voting is an extremely important reality of Indian elections. Okay. So politicians decide in terms of to whom one should give party ticket, to which caste. How will politicians decide to which caste? They will think in terms of what is the population of that caste in the particular constituency. So whom are they likely to vote? And sometimes when they're anyway going to vote for BJP, for example, they may give a ticket to somebody else so that it gets the votes of that particular caste also. So that is the one calculation. So basically, either you give to that caste or not give that caste. Caste calculation is very, very important. Whether you respect or not respect, caste is a very important thing, which means that the caste on the whole vote. on the whole vote. Why do caste on the whole vote? Some parties are favorable to that caste. When they are favorable to that caste, they get all the economic and political benefits, various concessions, loans, and various schemes. So like that, for example, government may announce these scheme for sheep, but when they are giving something for the sheep, a particular caste is covered. Okay, when they are giving for buffaloes, a particular caste is covered. So like that, many schemes, they may look economical, but in fact, they may be targeting particular caste groups. Okay, so vote bank is a very, very important thing. So dominant caste has its own and plus mobilizes caste. This is the way caste plays a very important role in the political process. Okay.
Sir,
Oh.
are these schemes are necessary to target one particular caste? Because you said that they serve a purpose at least. So when
That's
you're
all.
giving sheep, so are they necessary or
You mean, is it good or bad? That is what you are asking.
sir?
I don't
Because
think anything wrong.
if you think
Hmm. No, that is another thing. Vote bank also is used as a negative word. I don't see why it should be used as a negative word. Caste can vote as caste. I don't think it is wrong. Again, vote bank politics means, in fact, seal not be wrong, which means identity-based voting also is not wrong. Definitely, should blacks vote for Trump? It doesn't make sense. So he has done so many things to hurt minorities, and the minorities en masse as minorities should vote for others. What is wrong with that? So a group is affected by policies. So a group can consider and debate what its interests are. So there can be connection between political party and caste. In fact, I'll discuss the working of democracy in India. The democracy worked through identities. At one time, people thought there are so many divisions in India. How will democracy work? But they understood Indian democracy is different, and Indian democracy works through divisions, through identities. But India is still united because all identities don't match. So caste identity is one, religious identity is one, uh, regional identity is another, different identities. All identities are not one. So there are different fault lines. So there is nothing wrong in identity-based mobilization. Identity politics is not wrong. So what I'm saying is that it is about for what use you are putting these identities. It is unfair to say Muslims shouldn't think as Muslims. How will they think as? It is unfair to say Dalits shouldn't think as Dalits, or Madigas shouldn't think as Madigas. Madigas as a group, they are facing the problem. Malas are taking all the seats. So why shouldn't Madigas think? And Muslims as a group are facing the problem. Why shouldn't they think? So group identity is an important aspect of political reality. So there is nothing wrong in vote bank politics, though the examiner may have intended it is wrong, but as a sociology student or an anthropology student, you are free to critique. In fact, there are questions like that. How caste has strengthened democracy? Do you think the caste has caste and politics? We'll look into that. Just 1 second. Yeah, the question is on, has it strengthened or weakened? We'll examine. You can't assume that the caste played a negative role only. Caste is playing a negative role, no doubt about it. But you cannot say it is only negative role. Okay, next. So identity politics, vote bank, dominant caste, these are all interlinked concepts. But you see, the best way to write is to take empirical examples. This is the theory, but you have to give examples of the caste. I basically gave Andhra Pradesh examples, but you can take your own examples from your own state. That's how caste should be written, because it is highly region specific. A person from one state can't make out what are the castes in other states. can't feel what are these, who are these Jats and who are these people, Yadavs. But we know some, for example, you can take Yadavs. Yadavs are there in Bihar, UP. Yadavs came to power. Yadav is a dominant caste. Okay, so whatever the examples you know, you can use. So vote bank is about group voting, identity-based voting. And when you're writing answers, you can say, this is why some people criticize, but it has a positive purpose. The nature of this examination is that even if you have a strong conviction one way, you say what the other side is, especially to a person like this. Okay, how group-based voting is wrong, how merit can be sacrificed, how people can go on with highly partisan interests. But then this can also be good when it leads to protection of the weak, when poorer people are mobilized. So you give pros and cons, but you cannot take a stand that vote bank in itself is wrong or identity itself is wrong. You can't even take a stand dominant caste is wrong. No. Okay, Hiram?
So just trying to understand, so what is the problem with identity-less society or a single identity society? It's besides the domination of the upper
Because
caste.
the identities are real, why do you want to have a society without identities? I mean, is it not natural for a man to belong to a group? We belong to families, and families belong to some larger group. No, is it not natural? Because what is happening under westernization is that only national identity is important and all other identities are wrong. National identity is one identity. So national identity became fashionable. You can say proudly, I am an Indian, but all other identities are considered pre-modern. And because they are considered pre-modern, people are asking, how can democracy work? If you think you are a Kamma, you are a Telugu speaking, how can democracy work? So in fact, that is how we critiqued Indian democracy. But now we know identities are not wrong, identities are there. It is a matter of how we use the identities. I mean, the question is, number one, that is natural. Number two, they are there. And number three, what is wrong with it? That is the question. It is not that if people lose identity, is there any problem? It is not like that. Identities are there. And then there are group-based inequalities. Remember, I'll take something like this. Is it not a group-based inequality? It is not individual inequality. Classes are individual. This is group-based. When it is group-based inequalities are there, what can be wrong with group-based mobilization? If women are being discriminated, shouldn't women identify, it is not my problem, it is a gender problem? Is it wrong for a woman to think not as a particular person, but as a woman? When you think of as a woman, then many women will come. Then you understand the general nature of the problem. Sexual harassment, if she is thinking that why am I harassed, others won't join. If you ask why are women harassed, then other women will join. Then we can think of a policy. So group thinking is not wrong. And belonging to groups is not wrong. Okay. So it is not that we are individuals and suddenly we belong to society. We belong to groups, smaller groups, larger groups. Family is one group. And that is how individuals are taken care of. For example, in a family, even if we don't contribute, others will help. But can we expect that from outside family? No. So brothers and sisters have obligations, and parents and children have, much more serious obligations. But do such obligations work outside family? No. So family group is one such group. Like that, society is divided into groups. So caste grouping had been an ancient thing. Caste, some people within the caste are taking care of the people within the caste. Some rich people are taking care of the poor, and the poor people will help the rich in their own ways. So caste consciousness is a part of Indian consciousness.
Sir, So if we strive towards identityless society, so it doesn't turn out to be a better society.
It need not. First of all, identityless society is not possible because identity, group identity, is a biological thing.
Only if
You
we
are just
focus on
you are not only an individual, you also belong to a larger group. That is my point. So remember, in this particular case, it is not a call for identityless society. You be individual and then after that be Indian. That is a proposal, right? Nobody is saying don't be an Indian. So no other identity. You are a citizen and then Indian. So that kind of a thing will help when the identity is when they belong to the identities which are dominating in the system. So for example, it will be favorable to Hindus and not Muslims. It will be favorable to upper caste and not lower caste. Because lower caste need an identity to mobilize. Upper caste don't need. So identity is nothing but the mobilization. As long as the mobilization is for a cause, that is good. If a group is mobilized for secularism, would it be a bad thing? No. If a group is mobilized for socialism, would it be a bad thing? No. And who will mobilize for socialism? The people who are affected. So one need not think only in terms of rich and poor. One can think in terms of different identities, particularly in a system, in a society like where class caste is a big correlation. So group is a reality of life. So groupism is not unconstitutional. Groupism is a reality of life, and identity is nothing but groupism. So there is nothing wrong with vote bank. There is nothing wrong with identity politics. That is why always be aware. Whoever is against an identity is most likely to belong to an identity which he is comfortable with. Okay, which is privileged. So if you belong to the privileged identity, you don't want to talk about the identity. But if you don't, you need to talk about, because you need to associate yourself with others who are suffering, who are being discriminated, and fight for justice. It's an action for group-based movement. There's nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. So you work out pros and cons. Nothing wrong. Westernization and institutionalized changes in India. Westernization and institutional. These are all institutional changes. Democracy, liberty, equality, fraternity, the constitution, and plus nationalism, which is given in unity and integrity of India. So new identity that Westernization gave is nationalism. And remaining are values. New identity is nationalism, and values being liberty, equality, fraternity, democracy. And all these institutions, everything is democracy, and all came from Westernization of the legislature, executive, separation of powers, democracy, everything. Okay. So that is about M.N. Srinivas. Okay. Any questions? Okay.
Sir,
Next week. Okay.
we often come across two words, Varna and Jati. How and
okay. Varna, just 1 second. Varna is one of these four. Jati means caste. That is Hindi equivalent of caste. Jati, or maybe. It is not race. Race is a completely different concept which we discussed. Race is a completely different concept. That is about biology, genetics. It's about Varna and caste. And caste is called Jati or Jati. Okay, Kamma is Jati, I think, in Hindi. Reddy, particular caste. What is the difference? Varna is a category, is a label. Different castes come under this. And caste contest. But caste or Jati is real. People know exactly to which caste they belong, but people may not know to which Varna they belong. For example, many Kammas and Reddys may think that they are Kshatriyas because they are dominant, but they don't technically. They come under Shudras. Okay, so Varna is a category, classification, because you need an all India picture, because castes are linguistic. So one caste in one region will not be known. In fact, that is what is good about this all India service. You belong to one caste. When you are posted to some other state, people don't know to which caste you belong. Okay, because they they don't know how to place you, and so they are relatively free from the prejudices. Okay, so a caste system or caste name is linguistic phenomena. Linguistic, not an all India phenomena, but caste system is an all India phenomena. And four names, four Varna names, again all India phenomena. So Emerson says Varna scheme became popular during British times because they wanted to make sense of these thousands of castes. So when they wanted to make sense of these thousands of castes, they wanted people to say caste and also Varna, or wanted them to say Varna. So it became, Varna became more popular. Okay. And anyway, to the question which I didn't discuss here, how more and more castes are created. That I didn't discuss in this. So, for example, there is a caste C, and see in the Nonia's case, all of them moved, but possibly some people are better off. So they may have gone to a different place and they are better off. Then they may call themselves new name, with a new name, and refuse to give to the previous, to the members of the same previous, to the members of their own caste previously. So for example, which means it belongs to C, and C splits and becomes C1. And C1 may refuse to give their daughters to C, which means caste got split. That is how multiple castes are created. So in one case, these people may help and push everybody. That is the case Nonias represents. But in some case, they may find it very difficult to help. So because of certain favorable circumstances, they became rich. And so now they give themselves a new name and then say they belong to higher Varna, and they refuse to give their daughters. A new caste is created. Sometimes a subcaste. Subcastes are there, and subcastes also can be endogamous. And subcaste may one day be a caste itself and claim higher Varna. Okay. So essentially, economic and political power, lifestyle modification, and applying that rule in the context of marriage. Endogamy is the final thing. When you are no longer giving your daughter to the outside, then caste is formed. Okay, so new castes get founded. New castes get formed. That is why I asked, where are new castes easier to be founded, South India or North India? I said South India. Why? Because of cross cousin marriages. Okay, few people can declare themselves to belong to a new caste. Whereas in North India, it is difficult because you have to give your daughter to somebody who is far off. Okay, so it is about family, endogamy. This is how things operate. Okay, any question? So is it clear? Okay.